Well, can you believe it? We have this election theft in Venezuela. I mean, even any objective person sees 73% of the people that are voting, they're saying, oh my gosh, get rid of the dictatorship. But it ain't going anywhere. You know why? China and Russia just called in and said, hey, you stole that one in style. We're with you. You're against the United States, right? Yeah, we're on your side. So the United States condemns the election, not, I'm sure, because they're really against, these stolen elections. It's because China and Russia are working with Venezuela, along with Iran. You get it? Iran, Venezuela, China, Russia, North Korea. We're seeing the nations lining up. And by the way, you know what they have in common? They're all out to destroy the American economy. They're praying Trump never gets near the White House again. And they're counting on the fact that we're in a woke collapse of our own culture, which is why we're going to be talking today about the Olympics, about my friend Arthur Pawlowski, who's been over 100 times arrested in Canada, of all places, and about nationalism, why it's hated by the left and loved by people that want freedom. We're going to cover all that, but I just want to tell you something. These BRICS nations, they are going to go after that dollar. There's like 30 nations led by China and Russia. And I'm sorry, India is involved with it, and Venezuela. They want to claw away their dependence on the dollar, their relationship with the dollar. They want trillions of dollars of debt coming back home to the United States so that our inflation goes up like this. So a loaf of bread costs you like $20. It can get ugly fast. That's why you've got to figure out where to park your wealth. There's a surge of interest right now in crypto for justifiable reasons, but what has been for thousands of years the store of value? Silver, my friend, is going to be used by all the technology needs silver, and gold. They're buying up gold in China and Russia. Isn't that interesting? They want a gold-backed new global currency. I want you to write the word gold in the comment section if you're on Facebook or Instagram. Get a hold of my report on the de-dollarization of what's happening globally, how this could be kind of like an aspect of God's discipline in the West, but you don't have to be caught off guard. I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/gold, lancewallnau.com/gold, and you'll download the report and find out how you can take your IRA or a 401k, and you could keep it and protect it from a stock market crash, inflation, or the dollar hitting a dumpster fire, because you put your assets in precious metals that are safe. Once again, lancewallnau.com/gold. A little bit of knowledge is a powerful thing, especially if it is knowledge acted on before the crisis comes. lancewallnau.com/gold. Put gold in the subject line. And let's talk about the Olympics and its strange connection to the Reign of Terror, and why are they celebrating the beheading of Marie Antoinette? It's because the spirit of anarchy is entering the ludicrous, woke, left Western civilization. Let's get into it. I want to talk about this opening act of the Olympics, something you haven't heard, an angle nobody caught. So let me just put it to you straight. Then we're going to fill in the details. The opening act going down the Seine River, the singing decapitated head of Marie Antoinette, the pageantry, all which goes up to a recreation of really the taking over of Notre Dame in 1793 and declaring a new day with a new deity, casting out Christianity and the old vestiges of Christian faith, and replacing it with a new age of inclusivity and tolerance. In 1793, transvestites and all manner of eccentricity was actually heralded and paraded as these participated in recreation of the Last Supper, acting as apostles in Notre Dame, once it was stripped of all its religious regalia. A group called the Jacobins, who was a small group actually politically among four factions vying for power in France, had succeeded in taking over the cultural government apparatus and bringing in what's known as the Reign of Terror. What's strange about this whole scene is it's a recreation and celebration of the French Revolution. The problem is the French Revolution led to the Reign of Terror, led to the guillotines, led to social chaos, the rejection of Christ from the culture and the insertion of a new era of inclusivity, brotherhood, tolerance, where perversion was exalted to the level of a state of enlightenment. If you get that 1793 foundation for what you were looking at, and then you see President Macron, oddly enough, saying, this is what France is all about, reading into their French Revolution and the spirit of revolution and inclusion, not even realizing that he's endorsing the uprising of a reign of terror. You get to understand why it is that mocking Christianity was part of the agenda, even though they tried to hide it. Mercedes will fill us in with some information, I think, but they used the Last Supper, Da Vinci's Last Supper, as a model. That was an intentional piece of their artwork. So it wasn't unintentional. It wasn't misunderstood. Dionysian, the purple guy dressed like Barney, the dinosaur, he's all eating his grapes. And Dionysian was because when they had the 1793 inauguration of the new government that led to the Reign of Terror, they brought in a celebration of the Roman and Greek orgiastic gods of feasting and pagan celebration, as though that was bringing back the old gods. It's like Jonathan Cahn wrote in his book about we're seeing the reemergence of ancient deities. Well, Dionysian festivals and feasting and debauchery and drinking was all part of what was included in the 1793 ceremony at Notre Dame, which this kind of is leading up to and culminating in. The woman you see, or it's not a woman, it's the heavy-set lesbian gal that is operating as Jesus' substitute there at the scene of the Last Supper. She declared after the event was over, we have just rewritten what we will call now the gay New Testament. So you can't separate the religious thematic, the intentionality of that in the perverse world of what they were doing. But it's essentially a celebration of the French Revolution, the dethronement of the intolerance of Christianity, and the enthronement of a new era of exclusivity. And once again, I say this again, at this time, transvestites were a prominent part of the new elite expression of diversity in the French culture. So Mercedes, that's the unusual missed aspect, that this was a 1793 recreation of the march with Marie Antoinette getting her head cut off, the guillotine coming in. And in a weird way, if art is prophetic in a demonic sense, it's saying a new age of potential global tyranny can emerge as we throw out the old vestiges of Christian restraint and enter into a new celebration of our pagan origins and the multiplicity of gods and expressions that exist in the human race. Take it from there.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I was just going to comment on, to go along with what you're saying here. One of the articles I'm reading here is from Yahoo, but it says, others in the statement of Paris 2024 producers obtained by the Warp said the festivities in the segment Thomas Jolly took inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting to create the setting. Producers said in a statement, clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect towards any religious group or belief. Jolly is not the first artist to make reference to the world famous work of art. Andy Warhol, to the Simpsons have all done it before him. And it's interesting too, you go a little bit further back, Lance, I've got another article here by Vogue. And one of the things that they say, Jolly says, Paris may look a little chaotic, there's room for everyone. It's true, but it allows everyone to find the place in themselves. The opening ceremony will be a success, Jolly says, if everyone feels represented in it. And so, you look at statements like that, and I don't see the billions of people who are watching of that, Christians, Jews, Muslims who share the worldview that was expressed there. And so, Lance, you talk about
to your point, if you want to be inclusive,
yeah,
the majority of the world isn't drag queen, transvestite, transgender. They're actually the 2 billion Muslims, the 1.5 billion Christians, and to them, they're looking at this as a mocking of their faith. If they had dared to touch Islamic symbolism in that, you would be seeing an entire different firestorm, because some 25% of France right now is unassimilated Islamic immigration that is totally not integrated into the culture at all.
Yeah.
And so it's not inclusive. Let me read you a quote here, which just lets you think that I am not getting this clear. And we should add in post, we should put a picture here of the Dionysian, purple guy, with the grapes in his mouth. The producer of this event said, "It's not my inspiration," and that should be pretty obvious. You see, there's Dionysius arriving on a table. And why is he there? First and foremost, he is the pagan god of Greek celebration and mythology. It's called festivity. He's the god of wine, which is one of the jewels of France, and the father of a Sequana, who's the goddess of the river Seine. The idea was to depict a big pagan celebration linked to the ancient gods of Olympus, and thus we tie it in to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. That's the artist version of we wanted to bring the pagan deities in and recreate the Last Supper as a whole different motif involving our people and their diversity.
Yeah. I mean, showing that at their table, at this pagan table, all are welcome, juxtaposed to the table of Christ and the apostles, which is exclusive, to a certain extent. And so, I mean, also, Lance, I've got a quote here from him. It says, from Thomas Jolly, I'm convinced that in our time, we need to project ourselves together towards common ideals. As such, the ceremonies will be a great opportunity to share a collective narrative. So it's interesting, Lance. I mean, you talk about this. You talk about 7 mountains and how at the tops of these mountains, there are gatekeepers. There's positions of influence within culture and society. And this role that he was given, he clearly portrayed his common ideals, what he believes by and large, and people live in their bubbles. I'm not even saying he did anything malicious, but he has a worldview and he's been put in a position of power, and he's promoting that worldview in front of billions of people at home. So I just think it's a perfect use case. It's a perfect example of when you talk about 7 mountains and gates of influence.
Indeed. Now, the other story that was really big there, we've got only 2 minutes, and I don't want to agonize over this too much, but the Italian boxer who went up against what the argument is, this is a male boxing a female. And this is where I think the trans community creates the wedge issue out of the obscurity or the confusion of a minority of people who get a maximum amount of exposure so that they redefine what is normal. What you have here is, I don't know what percentage of mankind is in chromosome, an XY, which is a male with all the advantages of muscle development, bone structure, testosterone, etc. It's possible. There is a small fraction of humanity that is an XY male born with female genitalia. So what you've got here is an XY male chromosome with all the advantages of a male anatomy in a boxing profession against XX females who do not have that, and beating the crap out of them. And what I would say is that what you need to do to be fair is to say, let XY males who identify as female because they have the genitalia of a female, and I can't even prove that right now because you can't really find the argument clarified. They should fight each other. So you got the one XY female from Taipei who was disqualified because she didn't match the chromosome structure. She ought to fight this other one here who's XY female, and let there be a category where XY females are able to fight. But you cannot put someone with a male chromosomal anatomy into the ring with a pure female XX and expect it to be a fair fight, because it's not going to be. And so that's my way of bringing down, the Solomon-like solution. Let each category fight each other.
I also think, Lance, it just comes down to it's a social commentary on the world we live in, that we've over the years seen so many female sports begin to be dominated by transgender women who, like you're saying, have the biological XY factor. And that is the real issue here. It's a crazy world we live in where we're watching the Olympics and everybody at home's going, is that a guy?
We're going to come right back in another second. Don't miss a thing. I want to take a moment to talk about the volatile financial time that we're in. And I want you to empower yourself with knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge, the Bible says. Visit lancewallnau.com/birch and get a free information kit. Consider discussing how to shift your 401k or your retirement account into a tax-sheltered gold and silver account. Why don't you go to lancewallnau.com/birch right now and take action for a secure future. Welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show. By the way, you can follow our daily analysis of things on lancewallnau.com/podcast. lancewallnau.com/podcast, because we're there 7 days a week covering these things, and you don't want to miss we always bring some offbeat, unexpected perspective. For instance, I believe everybody that is a Christian, everybody that believes the Bible, and it's a large part of our audience based on the response we've seen, you know that there's something insidious going on in the spiritual warfare of the cosmos over the destiny of the United States. It is evil, but I want you to think about this. There is a superordinate intelligence. That is what principalities and powers or spiritual rulers are doing when they are able to find human agency. You see human agency acting with a cunning that is so effective that it leads us to conspiracy theories that, they planned this all along. Well, maybe not. Maybe there's a spiritual warfare that's working out where people are being influenced by an intelligence that makes them smarter than they actually are, and they stumble into a kind of an execution of a blueprint, if you will, that is demonically wise. The Bible does talk about a wisdom that comes from below. It doesn't say a stupidity, it says a wisdom, because wisdom is the means to create an end. There's a way to control humanity. There's a way to destroy the United States. So therefore, what we just heard in that last segment about the Kamala Harris word salad, when she's talking about reimagining things and creating a new beginning, it's the Marxist concept that your history and what you've been all about needs to be eradicated. This is why the 1619 Project, the attack on the origins of the United States, the fact that every founder was a racist and therefore their faces should be blown up on Mount Rushmore and all the statues should be torn down, and we should get rid of the 10 Commandments in the school systems and burn the flag. Anything that reminds you of the cohesion of your personal past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that enables you to have a history that you can build on in the future, must be blown up. Cultural Marxism, therefore, the LGBTQ transgender movement is detonating the very cement, the moral cohesion that holds the bricks together in the American experiment. At every level, cultural Marxism is designed to pit us, and Harris will be the crown princess of this process. You watch. It'll be black against white. It'll be male against female. It'll be straight against non-straight. It'll be the working masses in an economic breakdown against the managing class or the owners of business, who will be vilified. Because as you tear up the cohesion of a nation, you produce tribalism. Tribalism, people against people, nation against nation, ethnicity against ethnicity, religion against religion. And in that breakdown of cohesion, the nation state begins to fragment. And as the nation state loses its cohesion, empire or a global system comes in and rewrites where you fit in the global order. Let go of your past and be part of something new. And I explain this in 2 minutes on a board, basically breaking down Yoram Hazony. That's the brilliant Jewish Israel professor who wrote the book, The Virtue of Nationalism, and how God took 12 separate tribes in Israel and brought them together with a common language, common faith, and a common geographic boundary, and said, flourish within the limits of this geography. Same thing with the United States. Take the 13 colonies. They had to come together and form a cohesion. Once they formed a cohesion, they could become a nation state. a defined geography, a defined language, a defined history, a defined value, a defined spirituality. And that creates the cohesion of a nation state. Marxism wants to detonate that cohesion because it makes you subject to assimilation in an empire. An empire will be China, Russia, perhaps a revived caliphate, working in some awkward collusion together to create a dominant new global reset where I promise you the United States is at the bottom of the food chain as punishment for its years of holding together a former world order. Just watch how I explain it in this segment. So where are the nations that you're leading in your level 10 leadership? We're talking about a leadership university here. Where does the nation call and leadership converge? If you go to Matthew 25, I told you earlier the Great Commission is, go make disciples of nations. But I haven't heard much taught about this. Matthew 25, I noticed like Derek Prince, Gordon Lindsay, various people would talk about the ultimate state of things. If the beast is over here, this produces the goat nations. This produces sheep nations. The final battle is going to be between these two. The nations that resist assimilation and the system that demands conformity. This is why the Davos crowd, the European Union, global climate, COVID, are all the tools of the empire spirit trying to break down your individual rights as a nation and your individual rights as an individual, as a person. So the idea is that Jesus says when he returns, when he comes back, he will sit in his glorious throne, this is Matthew 25, and he'll separate the nations into two categories, sheep nations and goat nations. And we've never really known what to do with this particular chapter, but Jesus taught it. And the number one characteristic of the sheep nation is that I was hungry, you fed me. I was in prison and you visited me. And he basically says, as much as you've done to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. Which means that there will be nations that in the last days will resist conformity and assimilation into a system where they will persecute the nation of Israel and they will prosecute Christians. They will target them. And this is the common characteristic of all these strong nationalist movements that are healthy, whether it's in El Salvador, or whether it's in Argentina, or whether it's in Hungary and in Poland and Eastern Europe primarily, where they experience the ravages of communism under the USSR, under the Soviet Union. You see these nations try to preserve their culture and their Christian identity. And so the sheep nations will be the final ones that'll be the go-to places. Just like right now, people go from state to state. They get out of California, they come over to Texas. And we pray that they don't bring California with them into Texas, because there's a reason why they're coming to Texas or they're going to Florida, because the ideology, the cohesion, they're almost like, if you don't mind me saying so, like sheep regions within parts of the country that are antagonistic to those values. So, Mercedes, any thoughts on this?
No, I think it's case in point. I mean, Lance, this is stuff you've been teaching for years. In fact, we put a lot of this in our book. We had a whole section in God's Chaos Candidate and God's Chaos Code all about this, about tribalism and how, I mean, you write in there, like when the unions collapsed, it moved into pitting genders against each other, races against each other. And this is what the Democrats exploit. And I think this is what's really unique about conservatism, is that it isn't like that. It's we're all one tribe, limited government, from all races, all creeds, and more we see minorities coming in, even people from the LGBT community coming in saying, hey, the way the Democrats are governing, it's so radical, it's so out there, it doesn't represent the middle anymore. And so it's just fascinating to see how things have really changed over the last 10 to 20 years politically.
And it's the woke, liberal, progressive power of government that is cobbling together these well-funded, eccentric, organizations, NGOs that are creating this dangerous takeover of the West. You can see it in Europe, right there in the Olympic ceremony, the extent to which Europe, Canada, the United States, and parts of South America are coming under this alien ideology, which I think is weakening us for takeover from cohesive, powerful, well-disciplined nations. Arthur Pawlowski is a man in Canada, Polish origin, moves to Canada, and he has been persecuted, locked up, simply for standing up against Trudeau and their woke agenda. He spoke at our Courage Tour. We do Courage Tour events all over the states, and he just spoke there last week. I want you to catch what Arthur says.
I have been arrested more times than I can remember. Over 120 court cases, over 350 citations. I spend more time in a court or in jail than in the church as a pastor, believe it or not. I have been kept in metal cages. I have been put in psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors or even knowledge of Alberta Health Services. Completely illegal. I have been kept in solitary confinement. My life was threatened. I had price on my head multiple times. They lit our house on fire in the middle of the night. They unscrewed tires in our cars, our trucks. I was physically attacked. And yet when I share my story, I want the people to know that they've done everything in their power to shut me up, and here I am in front of you. When I share my story, I don't want the people to hear, look what horrible things they have done to this man. I want you to say, look what an amazing things the Lord has done for him.
And by the way, you want to be able to go to thecouragetour.com. Make sure you put your name in there and let us know that you want to know when we're going to be in your neighborhood, in your state, because we're looking at possibly in Carolina and Pennsylvania and other places. And you could be these powerful speakers telling their story. But the thing that I don't have time to get into it in this podcast, we're going to have to exit out so quickly, but I'll pick it up in the next one, is that this agenda for controlling humanity, like I said, is an insidious spiritual intelligence, because I think it's even working in the area of science and technology to be able to create, as you know, Harari has said for the World Economic Forum, the vaccine has the great potential, for instance, of being able to inject nanoparticles that have the technology to be able to monitor a human being, to be able to track them, to be able to actually process what their mood is and their response to news cycles or to political declarations, whether they're angry or frustrated or fearful or happy. And that this kind of a power, if it was ever in the hands of a Stalin or a Hitler or a Mao or a Caesar, would have completely revolutionized their ability to control and oppose their opposition. Add to it artificial intelligence that could take that nanobytes of information and process it so quickly. You don't have people reporting on each other with little documents like in the Soviet Union, spying on their neighbor, because you have instantaneous sorting out of where your people are, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're doing. And so this is like something out of a Stephen King novel, except it might even correspond more closely to the book of Revelation, because this is the beast system, the potential mark. And now we're finding out the DNA itself is being affected by the vaccine, but I'm going to cover that in the next program. I'm going to have to stop right here. You want to catch the next one at lancewallnau.com/podcast. We'll see you again next week.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world